Hello everyone! I'm up here at Belgatos Park on a hike today, and I wanted to share with you some different things about California's native plant communities right here on our own trail near our school. We have Oak Woodland Community, which is this one right behind me, with two different types of oak trees that I'll talk a little bit about. And then down below we have the creek, which is the riparian community. And then we have an area which is hot and dry with small plants like shrubs that's called the chaparral. And plants like to grow in communities with each other. Just like people form communities, so do plants. I'm looking at the ground here and I'm noticing not only lots of acorns, but also different types of leaves. There's this type here, which is lobed, kind of longer, and it's got these big lobes on it. And then there's this other type here, which is rounder and more prickly. And these come from two different types of oak trees that we have that are both locally native to our area. There's the evergreen live oak, and that's this one here. And you can see its leaves. And then there's the valley oak, which is this one over there. And it has the lobed leaves, and its leaves fall off in the winter. And you may be wondering, why are there leaves from the evergreen oak here on the ground? And part of the reason is because even evergreen trees that keep their leaves all year round, they still lose some, and you can see them here, starting to turn brown. It just doesn't happen all at once, it happens little by little. So here we are on the trail looking at this plant, kind of bushwhacked along the side here. It's not exactly a showstopper, but it's a pretty important plant, and so I wanted to tell you about it. It's one plant that you might not necessarily notice or really pay attention to. And it's got these white flowers this time of year and these little tiny green leaves. And this plant, believe it or not, is a powerhouse when it comes to pollinators, like native bees and all sorts of beneficial insects. It feeds them with the nectar in these flowers. You can see them kind of starting to sprout right now. They're fall flowers, which are not super common. And so they're very important for the food chain, the food web in this area. They're what's called a pioneer plant, which means that if there's any disturbance, which here there probably has been, they come up early and they grow fast, super fast. And they cover the ground and provide this nectar for pollinators and good cover for birds. And then later on in the evolution of this area, you might find that oak trees or larger things would shade it out and it would slowly die back. A lot of us have only heard bad things about this poor plant. People telling us to stay away from it, but it actually serves a really interesting purpose in the ecology of the riparian creek area. It's a fantastic plant for birds. They love the berries. You can see birds in here. It's got great cover and shelter for them. They feel very protected, and so they can get seeds down in these areas. And one interesting thing about poison oak is deer can eat poison oak, and it totally does not bother them in any way. It's not harmful to them at all. They don't get any rashes. So it's a great habitat plant for wildlife. Just not so much for humans because it wants to protect itself. So here we have some really interesting, tall, stocky, straight things. You can see they've flowered and the birds love these. These are actually not a California native, they're a non-native. They're called fennel, and they have kind of a licoricey taste when you taste the seeds. And the root and the leaves and the seeds are all edible by people and birds. One of the things I asked myself early on in my life was, you know, what do I want to know about this stuff? And the more I started being curious about it, the more I got interested, and I wanted to learn the names of things. And as I learned the names of things, and I learned about why they're here and what they do and how they support birds or, you know, pollinating insects, things like that, I started to feel more connected to my home town, my home area, the trails that are super close to my house and where we all live and where we have access to every day. So here's a thicket of some trees that are different that we haven't looked at yet. They're pretty bare. You'll notice some dead looking leaves. And if you look closely enough, you'll notice these round things. They look like brown, hard apples, but they sort of have more of a oblong shape, a fig shape. They're not perfectly round. And these trees are called the buckeye. And these trees are super smart. What they do is they lose their leaves in about July or August when it starts to get super hot and super dry, because they lose a lot of water through their leaves when it's hot and dry. The water actually flows out of the leaves. And so they just simply lose their leaves so that they can stay alive. And then they lose their leaves all winter. They grow them back again in the early spring. Now, why would some plants lose their leaves and some, like the evergreen live oak right here beside it, decide to keep their leaves? Well, if you look closely at even the live oak, they've decided to make an adaptation too. They've decided to make their leaves hard and leathery and thick and small. And that also helps them conserve water. Okay, so here's another really interesting adaptation. At first glance, you look at this, yeah, it looks pretty brown. This is the hottest season just ending. And what's interesting about this plant is, come back and look at it in the spring, it will be the brightest color of gray. A very beautiful, soft, gray, ferny looking plant. But right now, it has made an adaptation. What it's done is it's kind of dried up. And this plant is called the California sagebrush. It is an indicator of the chaparral, or what they also call coastal sagebrush. These are its berries or fruits here that the birds love. And as you touch this plant, you just gently touch it, you can smell this really nice sage fragrance come off this plant. And this one is right here on the edge of the trail. So see if you can spot it as you're walking up. So this is a neat spot to stand and look around. Not only do you get a great view, you get oak woodland, you get to see a view of the buckeyes. Down here we have a wash, which is almost a riparian area. And then as you go up the hill, you see the baccharis, you see the sagebrush and the chaparral blending again into oak woodland. So a lot of mixing of plant communities right here in this spot. So this wash here that follows the low point between this ridge up here and the other ridge behind me makes its own little mini watershed. It starts here and you can see the chaparral and the oak woodland blend into this ecotone here. and then it flows right down, and you can see the buckeye trees and their adaptability, because they can grow up on these dry hillsides, but they can also grow down in these washes. So this is a beginnings, like of our little watershed on these small foothills, our own little mini watershed, flowing out and down through the park and down through where we all live. So I'm right here by this sign where the trail goes off to the road, looking at the oaks, listening to the blue jays, and this is a cool thing I'm seeing, this big knotted tangle of twigs growing up this tree is actually poison oak. And what's cool about it is it can grow up into the tree like a vine. It's a true opportunist. It can grow like a shrub or like a vine. It wants to get up higher, probably to get more sun. So here, as we walk up to this tree, we see what looks like a young oak growing out of the base of a live oak, but it's actually disguising itself. The oak tree is nursing this other plant along, and as we come up closer, we can see it has the longer shaped leaves. Okay, so I finally found some toyon that has full berries all over the bush. This is right alongside the road, the fire road. So I challenge you, as you're walking along this road today, try and see which of these plants you can identify. You don't have to go off the road to do it. You can look alongside the road, see if you can find the toyon, and see what else maybe you can observe that I haven't even talked about today. And take some pictures and we can look at them and see what you find. So as I'm walking along this ridge trail, the one with the retaining wall that's falling over here, I'm seeing lots of different types of oaks. And then I'm seeing a new tree. This one's called a bay. And at first glance, you might confuse it with the toyon or the evergreen oak because it's got these green evergreen leaves once again. But a few tricks for identifying the bay. It has a smooth trunk. And also, its leaves are very skinny and they're totally smooth on the edge. And the other truly defining thing about the bay is that, here's a little baby one so I can get closer to it. When you take a leaf and you crumple it and you bring it up to your nose and smell it, it has a very, very strong smell because it's related to the bay that we use for cooking. The cooking bay is from the Mediterranean area, and the California bay, of course, is from California. You can also use it in cooking. It's not harmful, it's just stronger. Standing up here at the top in the oak woodland, I can pan from the oak trees up here across the hillside, and I can start to look at the different colors and textures and see that in this oak woodland there's more than just one tree. Of course, there's the valley oaks, the live oaks being the ones that are the darker green here, and then there's these bare trees, and those are the buckeyes. So I really enjoy sharing this with you, and I hope that you enjoy the hike, and I hope that you find some new things and enjoy being curious about what you see and what its purpose might be and how it might be connected in a way that you might never have thought about before.